It's time for the big one, folks. Perhaps the most mistreated show in television history, Mike, Lou, and Og! Wait, no one really remembers that show, except me, I guess. Unless you didn't read the title, the subject might actually kind of surprise you. The most mistreated show that I could find is The Weird Al Show. Yes, that Weird Al. Weird Al Yankovic had a CBS Kids show that ran for one season and then was canceled for seemingly unknown reasons at the time. However, now that Al has spoken his story, we know exactly what happened. The Weird Al Show has a Shout Factory DVD release, and for all 13 episodes, they got Al and the two producers of the show to go on to the commentary tracks and talk about the giant roller coaster ride of despair and agony that the network put them on from beginning to end. Trust me, the DVD is worth it for these commentary tracks alone. This is how I got all the information for this video here, and I'm gonna compile all the most important parts that they described and explain them to you in chronological order, painting a picture of the story that Al and his producers went through, one of betrayal, misery, and complete insanity. Let's dive into Versus the Network 104. What happens when the network explicitly and directly targets you? Weird Al Yankovic was looking to pitch his new idea for a show, The Weird Al Show. He eventually landed on CBS and they said, we'd love to have your show on CBS Kids, Al, because we like you and your ideas, but we're only taking educational programs right now, we're sorry. But that old Al was so smart and so slick, he thought of a lie and thought of it quick. He blurted out, "This is an educational show!" And then that turned out to be what made The Weird Al Show come to life, but also what resulted in its untimely demise. Al never really intended for his show to be educational, but now that it was, what's the worst that could happen? It's not like literally every single thing possible could go horribly wrong. It did. They got their setting together, they got their cast together, and they got their team of writers together, so everything was looking fine. Until the network started delivering their notes. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but it seems like in 1997, CBS Kids was being ran by Karens. Nothing was good enough for them, and every single thing had to fit in their narrow worldview. Despite the fact that they were running, a Saturday morning children's block, they thought that children were stupid and couldn't comprehend anything. The note that Al and his crew got the absolute most was, "Your lesson is too subtle. You can't only mention it 3 times in the episode, you need to mention it 20 times, 30 times, 65,746 times. The network believed that kids were so idiotic that if you didn't remind them of the lesson literally every single minute, they would forget, and then therefore, they wouldn't learn anything. Al, however, was constantly trying to reinforce the fact that no, kids are smarter than you give them credit for. If you touch on the lesson maybe 3-4 times, it'll be fine. They'll know what it's about. If anything, repeating the lesson over and over is only going to annoy them." Yeah, they didn't go for that, and even in the commentary tracks, you can hear the producers, and especially Al himself, constantly stop and go, here's the lesson again. You can tell that we didn't want to put this in right here because everything just stops. And you know what? He's right. It does just stop. What happens in the show is that they're in the middle of a conflict or a conversation or something, and then everything else freezes while they talk about the lesson for about 20, 25, 30 seconds, and then they go a little bit further, and then they stop it all again, and then go a little further, stop it all again. They're not even stopping to talk about it from a new angle either. They're doing the same one over and over again. And even then, it's not a good angle. It always amounts to, make the right friends because the wrong friends will make you do bad things. Be a good friend because that's what's nice. Learn to be creative because creativity is good. You can all see where I'm going with this, right? But Al is an industry professional. He's not gonna let little things like that get him down. In fact, he had a special little way of getting a dig at the network every single time they were going to present a lesson. If you watch The Weird Al Show, you'll know that right after the theme song, we get a giant piece of paper with Billy West literally screaming the moral at you. The screaming is meant to represent the network and how obvious everything's supposed to be. And then the paper gets ripped in half as a sign of, hey, we hate this moral, we don't want to teach it, screw you. Not since the theme song to Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain have I seen such an amazing middle finger to the network, and this one was far more subtle. But it didn't stop at the lessons either. You know something? When you hire Weird Al, you know what you're gonna get? Something weird. The network didn't seem to understand that though. because they thought that Weird Al was gonna try to be like Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, I'm not kidding. They even billed the show to advertisers and the media as Weird Al's gonna make his own version of Pee-wee's Playhouse. Weird Al's gonna make a spiritual successor to Pee-wee's series. When in fact, no, that's not true. Basically, the network looked at the show and said, a weird guy in a strange set? This has to be Pee-wee Herman all over again. I mean, yeah, to be fair, they did hire the guy who designed Pee-wee's Playhouse to make Al's subterranean cave, but that doesn't mean the show's the same. That's like saying the Powerpuff Girls and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends are the same show because they're both made by Craig McCracken. Actually, no, it's not even that. That's like saying the Total Drama series and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends are the same show because they're both made in Flash. See how that logic doesn't really work out? Doesn't work out here either. If you watch the Weird Al show, you would see that there is no comparison to Pee-wee minus some of the weird elements, and the fact that we're following around a central character, but to be fair, Pee-wee never owned any of that. That was just something that he did. But oh, we're not done. That was the warm-up act. They didn't like anything that Al or his writing team came up with, and I mean anything. They outright stated in the commentaries that 9 out of 10 times there would be a joke that had a big sticky note on it saying, no, don't do this is offensive, blah, blah, blah. Do you know how bad it got? They hired a UCLA doctor, who I will not say the name of here in case someone tries to go harass him, to intentionally get offended by the show's scripts. I'm not kidding. He was supposed to be in charge of their quote-unquote educational quota, but his real line of work turned out to be more in line with a prison snitch, going into the writing room and seeing what they were cooking up and then telling the network, and then the network would get all complainy. A big example of this is one of Weird Al's educational tapes that he shows to Bobby the Inquisitive Boy. There's a part that tells you, hey, don't fall asleep at the drinking fountain because you could drown. And they actually got offended by this, saying, do you want children to be afraid of drinking fountains? You're gonna scare them into thinking they're gonna drown when they get water. Yeah, this is the level we're on here. This isn't some Saturday Night Live skit or anything. This is something that actually happened to Weird Al. Though I must say, at least in this front, Al wasn't entirely blameless either. He tried to put in a lot of things that were not okay for a children's show, like puppets committing suicide on screen. Yeah, I can definitely see why that didn't make it past. But the network was all obsessed with quote-unquote imitatable behavior. So anything that a child could imitate themselves, they were automatically forbidden from putting in the show. So obviously you assume that means something like, don't put your finger in the electrical socket, or don't run with scissors. Well, yes, but it also includes things like, don't dip your arms in vats of melted chocolate. They had to fight to get this scene on the air with the argument that kids don't often have vats of melted chocolate. This whole quote-unquote imitatable behavior thing made no sense. Yeah, you can't have Al do things like run with scissors, but he can do things like smashing plates on someone's head or squirting people in the face with mustard. You can't have Al do things like punch people in the stomach, but you can have him shave off his own eyebrow? So I guess the no imitatable behavior rule was only enforced when the network felt like it. Funny. But you know what's not funny? When they try to mess with the main cast. The network loved characters like Val Brentwood, Gal Spy, and the Hooded Avenger, but for some reason the two that they took issue with were Bobby the Inquisitive Boy and Mrs. Fesenmeyer. I think the reason they didn't like Bobby is because Bobby was meant to make fun of the educational aspect of the show. Basically this annoying little kid who contributes nothing bursting in going,
but Al, I really want to know!
Bobby, I'll tell you later.
But I don't know why they didn't like Mrs. Fesenmeyer. Maybe it's because every time she came in there was some kind of home movie that was played, or I don't know. But this has got to be one of the worst things they did here. So, Al had an original choice for an actress to play Mrs. Fesenmeyer. He pitched her to the network and they said no because she had an accent, therefore sounded, their words, not mine, too ethnic. Yeah, that was a thing they actually said, and Al had no choice but to take it. That's why Mrs. Fesenmeyer is played by the person you see here. And as much as they liked Harvey, they never liked anything surrounding Harvey. Not because he was a real animal, no, nothing like that, but the network executives would constantly go up to the cast and crew saying, can't Harvey sing or dance or talk in some way? And they'd always have to remind them, no, Harvey is a hamster. Just a hamster. Nothing else. This is why Harvey constantly communicates in thought balloons, by the way. This was a compromise so that he couldn't talk, but he also couldn't be just a normal hamster. They also didn't like Harvey and the Fat Man cartoons, but mostly because they didn't like the Fat Man cartoons in general. And now these last 2 points are the worst things that happened in the production of the Weird Al show. Filming was the first one. Oh boy, this is bad. The network often forced them to film 2 episodes per day, meaning that they would go till like 4 or 5 in the morning filming these things, and then bam, they gotta get up and go to the next one. They also had to skirt around a lot of child labor laws too. With kid characters like Bobby the Inquisitive Boy or Huey or anyone else depending on the episode, you can't have them work past a certain time, so you had to go and do their scenes right now. So picture this. You haven't gotten a good night's sleep in a week. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You've just filmed an episode and now you have to film another one. And then the network goes up to you and says, hey, you know this part here in the script? You know, we haven't talked to you about that beforehand, but you know, we just decided through the power of magic and fortune cookies, we don't like this part anymore. Can you change it? Yeah, that actually happened. Multiple times. Right in the middle of production, even in the middle of shooting, they would say, you know, we just decided we don't like this part anymore. Can you change it on the spot? Ooh, and make it educational too. Yeah, I bet that went over well with the sleep-deprived everybody. And it never, ever stopped. It kept going on and on because nothing was ever good enough for these guys. Nothing that anybody said, did, or offered could ever appease them. So maybe that's why the show never got any advertisements. Yes, after everything Al and his friends went through, after all the work, after all the sleepless nights, they got nothing. The closest they got to advertisements were these generic bumpers. During the time that CBS Kids was airing the Weird Al show, they had this tagline called, Think CBS Kids. So all it was Al and sometimes holding Harvey going,
Think CBS Kids! Think spatulas! Think hamsters! Think lederhosen!
It's ironic that this was the network that had the tagline being, Think, when they thought that kids couldn't do that in the first place. You know what makes this even worse? Let me read you the list of celebrity guest stars that they had on the Weird Al show. Hanson, Fred Willard, Gilbert Gottfried, Alex Trebek, Ian Whitcomb, Patton Oswalt, John Tesh, Ron Popeil, Tony Little, Clarence Clemens, Michael McKean, Dr. Demento, Jack Plotnick, Drew Carey, Emo Phillips, Terry Garr, Dick Clark, All for One, Downtown Julie Brown, Charles Fleischer, Bare Naked Ladies, Victoria Jackson, Radish, Taj Mowry, Dick Van Patten, Fabio, Macho Man Randy Savage, and the original voices of Fred and Wilma Flintstone. Dang, that is impressive. I mean, wow. This single season, 13 episode show had the likes of Fabio and Macho Man Randy Savage. Not to mention all those other guest stars. I mean, look at this list. And you know what the network did to promote it? Nothing. They didn't mention a single one of these guest stars. Not Hanson, not All for One, not Victoria Jackson, not Emo Phillips, although they hated Emo Phillips, so no wonder. You have this giant, super impressive list of celebrities, and you don't say a single word? Well, who am I kidding? I'm the idiot here. Obviously, when I see a commercial that says, Thanks CBS Kids, I know, oh, Gilbert Gottfried's in this episode. Awesome, yeah! This could have been what saved the show. This could have been what got people to watch. Hanson was a huge band at the time. You had a Flintstones reunion. Come on, something like this, please, say something. So Weird Al was not doing so well in viewership because nobody knew it was on, and after all the abusive treatment that the network put them through, they did nothing to help them. They didn't lift a single finger, they didn't tell anybody about the special guest stars, which means that, yes, it happened. That inevitable fate was knocking at the Weird Al show's door. Yep, the Weird Al show was cancelled after 1 season. The network didn't let it perform well, they didn't help in the slightest, they didn't even give it a chance. Although I can't help but view this as karmic justice because all of the shows on CBS Kids' lineup got cancelled. Everyone hated all of them except the Weird Al show, but even with the Weird Al show included, they got terrible viewership. So they decided to burn the whole thing down. Al and the crew had mixed feelings about this. Filming the show and writing for the show and really anything about making the show itself was unbelievably stressful and painful and anger-inducing. But there was still a part of them that was gonna miss it. They put so much care and love into this thing, and it never got what it deserved. Even to the very end, it was treated as the network's whipping mule. To this day, Al says he's proud of the show and he likes it, but he wishes it could have been what it was always intended to be. And that's how I see it too. The Weird Al Show is definitely a good show, but it could have been so much better if the network wasn't so, well, evil. To any of those show creators out there, be careful. If the network doesn't want to pick up your show, don't try to change it into something it's not. Don't let them do to you what they did to Weird Al Yankovic. Well, folks, thanks for watching the video, and thanks for watching Versus the Network. Which one did you learn the most from? Which show do you think was treated the worst? Comment below and let me know, because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching, and we'll continue with regular program next time.